The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. No return address, just my name, handwritten in that looped cursive I'd recognize anywhere. My mother's handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper, an itemized bill, date of birth to age 18, every meal, every doctor visit, every pair of shoes, every hour she claimed to have lost raising me. The total at the bottom read $347,000. She wrote "past due" in red ink. Then she signed it with her full name, like she was closing a business deal. I sat at my kitchen counter for 12 minutes without moving. She wanted payment for being my mother. 3 weeks later, I walked into her bank with a cashier's check for exactly $3.47. The teller looked at the amount, looked at me, and then laughed so loudly the branch manager came out to see what was happening. But to understand how we got there, I need to take you back. Welcome back to toxic family revenge, where the quietest person in the room is the one keeping the receipts. And sometimes those receipts are printed on a cashier's check for $3.47. If a story like this has ever hit close to home, if you've ever been billed for your own existence by the person who brought you into this world, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And please, hit subscribe. Because the story I'm about to tell you isn't about revenge. It's about what happens when you stop pretending that cruelty is love. My name is Nora. I'm 34 years old. I'm a pediatric nurse at a community hospital outside of Columbus, Ohio. I have steady hands, a small apartment with a dying fiddle leaf fig, and a habit of being the person everyone calls when something goes wrong. My friends say I'm the calmest person they know. My coworkers say I never lose my composure. My family says I'm too sensitive, and then calls me to fix their problems in the same sentence. I'm 5'3", I wear my hair in a practical ponytail most days, and I have a small scar above my left eyebrow from a bicycle accident when I was 9. My mother told me that scar was proof I never watched you properly. She told me that at my 10th birthday party, in front of everyone. I laughed it off then. I was good at laughing things off, but I'm not laughing anymore. To understand the bill, you have to understand my mother. Her name is Diane. Diane Margaret Holloway. She's 61 years old, 5'7", with hair she highlights every 6 weeks at a salon she cannot afford. She has a way of standing with her arms crossed and her chin slightly lifted, like she's perpetually waiting for someone to apologize to her. Growing up, our house in suburban Cincinnati was immaculate. White carpet that no one was allowed to walk on with shoes. A living room that was never lived in. A dining room table set with china we never ate off of. My mother kept everything behind glass cabinets and velvet ropes, including me. I was an only child. My father, Richard, worked 60-hour weeks as a regional sales manager. He was a quiet man who came home, ate dinner in silence, and fell asleep in his recliner by 8 o'clock. He loved me, I think, but he loved not fighting with my mother more. Diane kept a ledger. I didn't know that until I was older. But looking back, I remember the way she'd write things down in a small spiral notebook after every expense. A new winter coat, school supplies, braces. She'd close the notebook and say, "That's going in the book, Nora." I thought it was a joke, a running family bit. It was not a joke. When I was 12, I overheard her on the phone with her sister, my Aunt Carol. Diane said, "I've spent $38,000 on that child since kindergarten. She'll pay me back someday. That's what children owe." I was standing in the hallway barefoot on the cold hardwood, holding a glass of water I no longer wanted. I didn't say anything. I went back to my room and drank the water and told myself I must have misheard. When I was 16, I got my first job at a diner. $10 an hour, plus tips. My mother sat me down at the kitchen table, the one with the placemats that couldn't be stained, and said, 50% of your paycheck goes to me, for room and board. I asked how much room and board cost. She said, "That's not your concern." I gave her 50% for 2 years. I worked 30 hours a week during the school year. I slept 4 hours a night. I graduated with a 3.9 GPA and a tiredness behind my eyes that never quite went away. When I got accepted to nursing school at Ohio State, my mother said, "You'll need to pay me back for your first 2 years of life before you leave." I thought she was being dramatic. I laughed. She didn't laugh back. She opened her spiral notebook and showed me a page dated the week I was born. "Labor and delivery plus 3-night hospital stay," she read aloud. $14,200. That's your starting balance. I looked at my father. He looked at his plate. I moved out 6 months later. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday in late September. I had just finished a 12-hour shift, 3 pediatric cancer patients, 1 code blue that we turned around. I was running on coffee and adrenaline and the kind of exhaustion that makes your bones feel heavy. I opened my mailbox expecting bills, student loans, car insurance, the usual. Instead, I pulled out a thick manila envelope. My mother's handwriting. No return address. No note on the outside. Just my name. I sat down on the bottom step of my apartment building's staircase. The light was that tired golden color of early evening. A neighbor's dog was barking somewhere inside. I could smell someone cooking onions 2 floors up. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, crisp, white, folded in thirds. The word invoice was typed at the top in bold font. Below that, my name. Below that, a list. Itemized, dated, cost assigned. August 12, 1990. Hospital birth. Labor, delivery, aftercare. $14,200. September 1990. Diapers. First month. $86. November 1992. Emergency room visit. Croup. $450. August 1995. Bicycle. Birthday gift. $210. September 1997. School supplies, 4th grade. $78. June 2000. Braces. Down payment. $1,200. August 2003. Winter coat. $140. The list went on. Every meal? No, but every doctor visit, every school supply purchase she remembered, every birthday gift she'd annotated with a price tag. The final line read, "Total cost of raising Nora Elizabeth Holloway from birth to age 18, $347,000. Past due. Payment expected within 30 days. At the bottom, she had signed her name in blue ink, Diane M. Holloway, and beneath that, in parentheses, she had written, "Interest accrues at 5% annually." I sat on that staircase for 12 minutes. I didn't cry. I didn't have the energy to cry. I just sat there, holding a bill for my own childhood, and felt something in my chest go very still. The dog stopped barking. The onions stopped smelling. The golden light turned gray. I folded the invoice back into thirds. I put it in my purse. I walked upstairs to my apartment. I made a cup of tea. I sat on my couch and looked at my fiddle leaf fig, and I said out loud, to no one, okay? I didn't call her. I didn't text. I didn't post anything on social media. I just waited. The first week, I did nothing. I went to work. I took care of sick children. I held a 5-year-old boy's hand while he got his port accessed. I went home. I slept. I stared at my ceiling. The second week, my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was cheerful. "Nora, honey, just checking in. Haven't heard from you in a while. Give your mother a call. Love you." She sounded like nothing had happened. The third week, she called again. This time, her voice was tighter. "Nora, I sent you something important. I need to know you received it. Call me back." I didn't. The fourth week, she showed up at my apartment, unannounced. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was in sweatpants, eating cereal straight from the box. She knocked 4 times. Then she used her key, the one I'd given her 7 years ago for emergencies. I'd forgotten she had it. She walked into my living room and looked around like she was assessing a property. Her eyes landed on the cereal box, on my unwashed hair, on the wilting fig. Then she looked at me. "Did you get my letter?" she asked. I put down the cereal box. "I got your invoice." "Then you know what you owe me." I looked at her. 34 years old, a nurse who had saved lives, a woman who had paid 50% of her teenage paychecks to this woman, a daughter who had never asked for anything except to be left in peace. "I've been thinking about it," I said. My voice was calm, that still voice, the one I use before an emergency. "Good," my mother said, "because I'm not getting any younger, and that money could be earning interest in my retirement account." She said that, out loud, in my apartment. I nodded slowly. "I understand." She smiled. It was the smile she gave waiters and cashiers, polite, transactional. "So when can I expect the first payment?" "I'm still calculating," I said. Her smile flickered. "Calculating what?" "Fair market value." She didn't ask what I meant. She just tilted her head, the way she always did when she decided someone wasn't worth her time. "Well, don't take too long." Then she left. She took her key with her. I sat in my living room for a long time after the door closed. Then I opened my laptop, and I started researching. 3 weeks later, my mother hosted her annual Thanksgiving dinner. She always hosted. The same guest list every year. My father, still quiet, still tired. My Aunt Carol, Diane's sister, who had stopped speaking to Diane 3 years ago but still came for the food. Uncle Brian, Carol's husband, who drank too much and fell asleep on the couch. My cousin Lauren, Carol's daughter, a real estate agent with a TikTok addiction. And a rotating cast of Diane's friends from her book club. I RSVP'd yes for the first time in 4 years. My mother was surprised. She said, "Oh, finally. Maybe you can start contributing to this family again." I said, "I'll bring dessert." I made a pecan pie from scratch. It took me 4 tries to get the crust right. While it baked, I went to my bank. I withdrew cash from my savings account, $3.47. I asked the teller for a cashier's check made out to Diane M. Holloway. The teller, a young woman named Keisha, who knew me because I came in every 2 weeks like clockwork, looked at the amount and said, "Is that a typo?" "No," I said. "It's exactly right." She printed the check. She looked at it. She looked at me. Then she laughed. Not a mean laugh. A surprised, delighted, what is happening laugh. The branch manager, a man named Mr. Hendricks, came out of his office. Keisha waved the check at him. He read it. He also laughed. "You're going to need to see this later," Keisha said, handing me the envelope. I put the envelope in my coat pocket, next to the folded pecan pie recipe I'd printed from the internet, next to my phone, next to a single index card with 3 words written on it. On Thanksgiving morning, I drove to my parents' house. The same white colonial on Maple Drive, the same white carpet, the same dining room table set with china we never ate off of. I walked in at noon. My mother hugged me like we were close. My father nodded at me from his recliner. Aunt Carol gave me a look that said, "I know something is happening, and I'm here for it." I put the pecan pie on the counter. I kept the envelope in my pocket. Dinner was served at 3 o'clock. Turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, gravy from a packet which my mother claimed was homemade. We passed dishes around the table. Conversation was surface level. Book club drama, Cousin Lauren's latest dating disaster, Uncle Brian's complaints about the neighbors. At 4:15, after the plates were cleared, my mother stood up. She tapped her wine glass with a fork. "Before dessert," she said, "I have an announcement." The room went quiet. She smiled. That smile. As you all know, Nora has been distant for the last few years, emotionally and financially, but I'm happy to say she's finally stepping up. All eyes turned to me. I set down my fork. I wiped my mouth with my napkin. I stood up slowly. "Actually," I said, "I have something first." My mother's smile froze. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the envelope. I walked around the table and placed it in front of her plate. "What is this?" she asked. "Payment in full," I said. The room went so quiet I could hear the ice melting in Uncle Brian's whiskey glass. My mother stared at the envelope. She didn't touch it. Her fingers were curled around her wine glass like she was holding on to something that might float away. "What are you talking about?" she said. Her voice had that thin, reedy quality it got when she was caught off guard. I'd heard it twice before. Once when the neighbor confronted her about stealing their newspaper. Once when I told her I was moving out. "I'm talking about your invoice," I said. "The one you sent me 6 weeks ago. Itemized, dated, signed." I kept my voice low, calm. The same voice I use when I tell a parent their child is going to be okay. "You billed me $347,000 for raising me. You said payment was past due. You said interest accrues at 5%. My father looked up from his plate. His fork was halfway to his mouth. He put it down slowly. "Diane," he said, "what is she talking about?" My mother's face did something complicated. The smile was gone. In its place was something I'd never seen before. Fear. Quick and bright and gone, almost instantly. Then she laughed. A high, tight laugh. "Nora's being dramatic," she said. "I sent her a joke. A mother-daughter inside thing. You know how she is. No sense of humor." I didn't react. I just stood there, next to the china cabinet, next to the glass figurines that had never been touched by human hands. "It wasn't a joke," I said. "You itemized my birth, my diapers, my bicycle. You wrote past due in red ink. You signed your full name." I looked at my father. "She's been keeping a ledger since I was born. I heard her on the phone with Aunt Carol when I was 12. She said I'd pay her back someday. That's what children owe." Aunt Carol set down her wine glass with a sharp clink. "She told me that," Carol said quietly. "I told her she was insane. She stopped speaking to me for 3 years. My mother's head snapped toward her sister. "You stay out of this, Carol." "No," I said. And the room shifted. Everyone looked at me. "She doesn't stay out of it. Everyone stays in it. Because this isn't between you and me anymore, Mom. You made it public when you put that invoice in the mail. You made it a document." I reached into my other pocket, the one with the index card. I unfolded it and placed it on the table next to the envelope. "This is my counter invoice," I said. "Fair market value for services rendered." My mother snatched the card. She read it aloud, her voice shaking. "Less minimum wage for household labor performed by minor child ages 10 to 18. 40 hours per week, 52 weeks per year, 8 years. 16,640 hours at $7.25 per hour equals $120,640. Less emotional damages for psychological abuse, $226,360. Total due to Nora Holloway, $0. Paid via cashier's check enclosed for $3.47 as symbolic acknowledgement of receipt of your invoice." She stopped reading. Her hands were trembling. "$3.47, she whispered. 1 cent for each year of my life," I said. "And 10 extra cents for the bicycle you said I owed you for, the one you gave me for my birthday, my 9th birthday." My father stood up. He walked over to my mother, took the index card from her hand, read it himself. Then he looked at me. For the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes that wasn't exhaustion. It was recognition. "She did keep a ledger," he said quietly. "I thought it was a joke, too." "It was never a joke," I said. My mother pushed back her chair. It scraped against the hardwood floor. She stood up, knocking over her wine glass. Red wine spread across the white tablecloth like a wound. "You ungrateful little—" "The cashier's check is in the envelope," I interrupted. $3.47. Payment in full for the raising of Nora Elizabeth Holloway. I'm not paying you another cent for existing." The room was completely still. Then Aunt Carol started laughing. Not mean, delighted. The same way Keisha, the bank teller, had laughed. "Oh, Diane," Carol said, wiping her eyes. "You finally met your match." My mother looked at her sister, at her husband, at her daughter, at the red wine soaking into her good linen. Then she looked at me. "I will never forgive you for this," she said. And I looked back at her, and I said the only thing left to say. "That's fine. I'm not billing you for it." I'm going to step out of the story for 1 second. If you've ever been the one who was supposed to be grateful for the bare minimum, if you've ever been told you owe someone for your own existence, you already know why I walked into that dining room with a cashier's check for $3.47. Tell me in the comments who tried to put a price tag on you, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do, because what happened after that dinner changed everything. Not just for me, for all of them. Now back to it. The dinner ended at 4:47. I know the time because I looked at my phone as I walked out the front door. The sun was already low. November in Ohio, gray and cold and honest. My father followed me to the porch. He stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the warm light from inside. He didn't have a coat on. "Nora," he said. I turned around. "Your mother—" He stopped, rubbed his face with both hands. "She's not going to let this go." "I know," I said. "She's going to tell everyone you stole from her, that you humiliated her for no reason." "I know that too." He nodded slowly. Then he did something I didn't expect. He smiled, a small, tired, real smile. The 347 was a nice touch. I almost laughed. "Thanks, Dad." He went back inside. I drove home in silence. No radio, no podcasts. Just the sound of the road and the heater and my own breathing. When I got to my apartment, I made a frozen pizza. I ate half of it standing over the sink. I watered my fiddle leaf fig, even though it was probably a lost cause. I took a shower. I washed my hair. I stood under the hot water until my fingers pruned. Then I checked my phone. 42 messages. Mostly from my mother's book club friends who had heard a version of the story that bore no resemblance to what actually happened. One from my father. "She's already on the phone with her lawyer, just so you know." And one from Aunt Carol. "Best Thanksgiving of my life. You're my favorite niece now. Lauren is pissed." I laughed out loud. Alone in my bathroom, wrapped in a towel, I laughed until my stomach hurt. Then I put my phone on silent. I went to bed at 9 o'clock, and I slept better than I had in years. The next morning, I woke up to a text from my mother. Just one line, "You're out of the will. I hope you're happy." I texted back, "I wasn't in it to begin with." She didn't respond. Over the following weeks, the fallout was not what I expected. My mother did tell everyone I'd stolen from her, but she told so many versions of the story that none of them matched. To her book club, I was an ungrateful daughter who refused to acknowledge her sacrifices. To her bridge group, I was a financial abuser who had taken advantage of her generosity. To her sisters, all three of them, she said I had forged the cashier's check. But here's the thing about telling too many lies. They start to eat each other. Aunt Carol called me the first week of December. She'd done some digging, found the spiral notebook my mother had kept for 30 years. "It's real," Carol said. "Every penny." She even added inflation adjustments in the margins. "Diane has been planning this since before you could walk." Carol sent me photos of the notebook, page after page. My childhood, reduced to line items. I didn't do anything with the photos. I didn't post them. I didn't send them to anyone. I just saved them in a folder on my phone labeled Receipts. Not for revenge, for clarity. My mother's lawyer, a man named Gerald who had handled my parents' taxes for 20 years, sent me a letter in January. He said my mother was considering legal action for emotional distress caused by public humiliation. I forwarded the letter to my hospital's legal department. They sent back a single-paragraph response that basically said, "Good luck with that." Nothing ever came of it. My father called me on Valentine's Day. He said my mother had started charging him for household expenses, itemized. "She gave me a bill for the TV dinner I ate last Tuesday," he said. "I think she's lost her mind." I asked if he was okay. He said, "I'm sleeping in the guest room. It's quieter." In March, my mother posted on Facebook about how children today have no respect for parental sacrifice. Someone commented asking if she'd really billed her daughter for her own birth. She deleted the comment. Then she deleted the whole post. Then she deleted her Facebook account. By April, the story had spread through our extended family. Most of my cousins thought it was hilarious. A A few of my aunts took my mother's side. One uncle sent me a check for $500 with a note that said, "For the therapy you're going to need." I cashed it. As for me, nothing dramatic changed. I still work the same job. I still live in the same apartment. My fig is still dying. But something shifted. I stopped checking my phone before bed. I stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. I stopped feeling like I owed anyone an apology for taking up space. The only real consequence? My mother stopped calling. And that, honestly, was the best payment of all. I've thought a lot about what justice looks like. When I was younger, I thought it meant my mother would wake up one day and realize what she'd done. She'd apologize. She'd say she was wrong. She'd hold me and tell me I was never a line item. That's not what happened. What happened was quieter. She didn't apologize. She didn't change. She just stopped being able to pretend. The invoice she sent me, that piece of paper, was supposed to remind me of my debt. Instead, it reminded everyone else of her cruelty. And once people saw it, they couldn't unsee it. That's the thing about family secrets. They only work if everyone agrees to keep them. I didn't break the agreement. I just stopped holding up my end. And the truth did the rest. I'm not saying I won. I'm saying I stopped losing. If you're watching this and you recognize something familiar, if someone in your family has made you feel like you owe them for existing, here's what I want you to know. You don't. You never did. The bare minimum of parenting is not a loan. Food and shelter are not a gift you need to repay. Being born was not a transaction you agreed to. You are not an invoice. So here's my question for you, and I want you to answer it in the comments. What would you put on your own counter invoice? What's the thing you've been carrying that was never yours to carry? Drop your answer below. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because I have more stories like this one, and the next one might be the one that gives you the words you've been looking for. My name is Nora. I'm a pediatric nurse. I have a dying fiddle leaf fig and a $3.47 receipt for my own existence. And I've never been more free. I've thought a lot about what justice looks like. When I was younger, I thought it meant my mother would wake up one day and realize what she'd done. She'd apologize. She'd say she was wrong. She'd hold me and tell me I was never a line item. That's not what happened. What happened was quieter. She didn't apologize. She didn't change. She just stopped being able to pretend. The invoice she sent me, that piece of paper, was supposed to remind me of my debt. Instead, it reminded everyone else of her cruelty, and once people saw it, they couldn't unsee it. That's the thing about family secrets. They only work if everyone agrees to keep them. I didn't break the agreement. I just stopped holding up my end, and the truth did the rest. I'm not saying I won. I'm saying I stopped losing. There's a difference between revenge and justice. Revenge would have been posting those notebook photos online. Revenge would have been calling her out on every platform. Revenge would have been sending the invoice to every person she'd ever known. I didn't do any of that. Not because I'm a better person. Because revenge would have meant I was still in the fight, still letting her define my actions. Justice was walking away. Justice was the cashier's check for $3.47, not to hurt her, but to close the ledger, to say, definitively, this account is settled. You get nothing more from me. And here's what I've learned in the months since that Thanksgiving. The people who loved me were always waiting for me to stop trying to earn their love. My father, for all his silence, sent me a birthday card in March with a note that said, "I'm proud of you. I should have said it sooner." Aunt Carol started calling me every Sunday. Even Cousin Lauren, who was initially pissed that I'd upstaged her, sent me a text after Christmas. "Your mom tried to bill me for the wine she spilled on her own tablecloth. You were right about her." Not everyone came around. Some of my mother's friends still think I'm a monster. One of my aunts hasn't spoken to me since Thanksgiving. My mother herself has taken to calling me the daughter who charged me for being born, which is the exact opposite of what happened, but I've stopped correcting people. The people who matter know the truth. The people who don't, they were never going to believe me anyway. If you're watching this and you recognize something familiar, if someone in your family has made you feel like you owe them for existing, here's what I want you to know. You don't. You never did. The bare minimum of parenting is not a loan. Food and shelter are not a gift you need to repay. Being born was not a transaction you agreed to. You are not an invoice. And here's the hard part. They might never see it. They might go to their graves believing they were right. My mother will probably die convinced that I owe her $347,000. That's not my problem anymore. I've paid my debt. $3.47, receipt included. So here's my question for you, and I want you to answer it in the comments. What would you put on your own counter invoice? What's the thing you've been carrying that was never yours to carry? Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's obligation. Maybe it's the weight of being the one who kept the peace while everyone else made demands. Drop your answer below. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because I have more stories like this one.